With the new year upon us and film cameras still becoming even more popular than ever, I thought I'd rank some of the best beginner cameras that I could find recommended online, and kind of create this bias guide of my personal opinions of whether these cameras are good or bad, or if they're actually worth your money. For this, I'll be splitting the video into two parts, one where I'll be looking at SLRs and one where I'll be looking at point and shoots, because different people have different preferences to what kind of budget camera they want. And I'll also be considering price, lens compatibility, general build quality, and features that are in the cameras while ranking them. So let's begin with SLRs. SLRs are your single lens reflex cameras, the ones where when you look through the viewfinder, you're seeing the image that is being taken through the lens. Most of these have interchangeable lenses, which is key for a good beginner camera and allows you to be more flexible with your compositions. But these will be a bit less automatic than your point and shoots, which are kind of made to be a point and shoot. So starting with probably one of the most popular beginner cameras is the Canon AE-1. This is my backlog of cameras that potentially don't work. The Canon AE-1, probably one of the most popular beginner cameras out there. This camera definitely does have a bit of a cool following and has some serious respect behind its body, and I can definitely see why. The build quality feels great, it's fully metal and it feels like a good camera to hold. It's got a nice weight to it. You've got manual shutter speeds from 2 seconds to 1,000th of a second, which is really good for a camera. And obviously interchangeable lenses. This is the 50mm f1.8, which is a pretty good lens. This camera uses the FD mount, which is kind of like a lock and click method, which is pretty interesting. And I've seen online some fairly cheap lenses you can get for this camera, so that's definitely a win. In terms of price, these working can be found for around £100 to £150, which I'm about 50-50 on. Definitely for a camera that, is beginner friendly, but also intermediate compatible. £150 isn't bad. I could see someone buying this camera and keeping it for a long time. And if that's what you want to do, I would highly recommend the Canon AE-1. But if it's your first time shooting film and you're not really sure if you're gonna like the medium, it's not something you might want to spend loads of money on, I can see why you'd be a bit distarred from this camera. If you still really wanted to go for the Canon brand name, I'd recommend the Canon AV-1. I've made a full video which I'll link down in the description below where I've tested that out. The AV-1 is kind of like a sister camera. It uses a different lens mount and it's a bit cheaper, but it's still very easy to use. It does have less shutter speed control and it's more automatic, but again, that's something you might be looking for in a beginner camera. I'd rank the AE-1 definitely an A tier because it is a really good camera, just the price is keeping it a bit lower for me. And the AV-1 I'd rank a B tier because it is also good, but not as good as the AE-1 obviously. The Pentax K1000 is another one of these cameras that is absolutely adored by the analog community, and I understand why. I've held one of these cameras once and I loved it. I am definitely a bit biased when it comes to Pentax. They're one of my favorite camera bodies and I'll definitely be talking about them more down the line, but the K1000 is one of their original cameras, which is just amazing. It is fundamentally a simple manual camera to use that only relies on a battery for the light meter, meaning it is fully mechanical for all your desires. The full metal body makes it an absolute tank of a camera that could probably be used as a weapon, and the K-mount series of lenses are amazing. The K-mount is probably one of my favorite series of lenses. In fact, I'm using a K-mount lens to film this YouTube video right now. And you can find so many different K-mount lenses for so cheap, and so many different focal lengths, they're just a really good lens variety for beginners. However, like the Canon AE-1, the K1000 has fallen into a bit of a price hiking due to its popularity. These cameras can be found from anywhere between £150 to £200, which I understand why, but at the same time that is kind of expensive, especially for a beginner camera. Because of that, I'm going to be ranking it at a B tier because truly I believe it is a good camera, it's just a bit too expensive. But fear not viewer, I have got some more K-mount cameras to talk about that are at much better price points. The Pentax ME and the Pentax ME Super are two cameras I absolutely adore. Not to be biased or anything, but these are just instant S tiers for me. These cameras are insanely beginner friendly and they were made to be that way. When Pentax initially launched them, they were the smallest metal-bodied SLRs that were fully automatic, and they have aged so well. Both of these cameras can be found for around £50, which is an amazing price point compared to the other cameras we've talked about so far. The Pentax ME doesn't have any manual shutter speed controls, but the ME Super does, so if you want to go for that, go for the ME Super. Both have inbuilt light meters, interchangeable lenses that take the K-mount series of lenses, which I've already glazed enough in this video. The main downside to these cameras is that they both need a battery to function, making them not fully mechanical. This isn't an awful thing, it just mainly means if the camera battery dies while you're out, you're not going to be able to use the camera. With them also not being fully mechanical, it means if they do break, you're less likely to be able to fix them on your own. The main selling point of these Pentax MEs and other similar models like the Pentax MX and MG is their compact design. I think they're quite iconic and trendy and have, the film camera silhouette. And because they are quite lightweight, they're not going to hurt if you've got them around your neck. Again, I am kind of biased when it comes to these cameras as I've used them a lot and I love the K-mount series of lenses. So it is an instant S tier for me. We're going to talk about one more Pentax camera now and then move on, which is the Pentax P30. This, of course, is another K-mount series of camera, but it is a bit more automatic and modern compared to the other cameras. And with that, it comes at an even cheaper price. This model in particular is the Pentax P30T and can be grabbed from anywhere between £20 and £30. And it serves pretty well as such a cheap camera at a beginner price. I've had this camera for a bit and I've used other P30 models and they're definitely not as compelling as the Pentax ME, but they still get the job done. Some of the things that throw it off for me are the plastic body build. The shutter advance as well doesn't feel as secure either, and more spring sounding. In terms of firing the shutter, it sounds pretty alright. One of the, good things about these cameras as well is it has the more modern Pentax K-mount lenses which have inbuilt automatic aperture control if that's something you desire. You can also use the lenses manually still, and it also has manual shutter speed control and an automatic shutter speed control. Like the Pentax ME, it does require a battery to work, so same issues there as the other cameras. The main issue I have with this camera though is the fact that it takes DX coding to read the ISO. And if you're a beginner, that doesn't really matter, but to me, it's just something that put me off the camera. Essentially, film canisters have a DX coding on them which determine the ISO. And cameras like that read that ISO and then set the light meter to the correct ISO, which sounds good in practice. However, people like me like to push film and experiment with our images. A camera like this is very limiting and doesn't let you do that. Again, no need to worry about that if you're a beginner. It's just coming from someone who's a bit more intermediate and wants to play with their film more. It's a very good beginner camera at a good price point with some good lenses. I would rank it a B. The final SLR on my list is the Olympus OM-10, actually one of the only cameras on this list I haven't used before. The OM-10 is pretty popular as well and can be found for around £50 to £80, and you know what, I can see why people like it. It's got some very good iconography. Olympus is a very nice name brand. Oh no, my camera light died. Oh no. The OM-10 can be found for around £50 to £80, which is definitely a good price point compared to other cameras on this list. It has a more metal-bodied build, which is desirable, but it does have no shutter speed controls. However, this can be bypassed by buying an additional manual exposure dial thing, which is good, but at the same time, do you really want to have to be buying accessories to use your camera manually? In my opinion, this camera is very similar to the Canon AE-1, but I do think it is a little better. And the OM mount also has a good series of lenses behind it, so I would give this camera a low A. It's only just pushing into the A boundary. For the next category, I'm going to be looking at point and shoot cameras, because some people don't really want the complexity of an SLR, they just more want to shoot film for the fun of it. Point and shoots definitely do have a lot of benefits like automatic exposure, automatic winding, more compact and easy to use designs, built-in flash. In my opinion, I think it's important to have a good point and shoot and a good SLR to have a good combination of cameras for different uses. So the first cameras I'm going to be talking about is the Kodak M35 and the Kodak Ektar H35. These are modern-made plastic mold cameras from Kodak that are more simple to use and fairly affordable and can be brought new in the modern age, which definitely is a benefit, I guess. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. These are essentially reusable disposable cameras. Plastic lenses, no actually built-in controls or anything. You have to manually wind the film. They aren't bad cameras, but they definitely are nowhere near great. The M35 can be found for around £15 to £20, but the H35 can be found for a little bit more as it's a bit more premium. Another benefit for the H35 is that it is a half-frame camera, which essentially means you get double the amount of images because it cuts down on the frame size. This can be viewed as a good thing and a bad thing. To me personally, half-frame is already going to have less quality, and then pairing that with the plastic lenses of these cameras, you are going to see a definite decrease in quality. However, for just a cheap point and shoot, which you're probably going to use for nostalgic vibes anyway, that might be the desired effect you want. Going into this, I think these are good beginner cameras for people who want to experiment with film but don't really know where to start. You know, they give you the basic understanding of how to expose a negative. However, at the same time, for £40 or less, you can find better, cheaper, automatic point and shoots. So for me, the M35 is going to be a C tier and the H35 is going to be a very low B tier. Olympus are known for their quality point and shoots, and I'm definitely a bit biased when it comes to say I love a good Olympus point and shoot. Their most popular ones especially being the MJU 1 and 2, which go for a hefty price on eBay. These are great cameras, fully automatic control, very nice clamshell and compact design, but they are just not worth the price. I'd say the best selling point about them is how small they are. I didn't actually realize how small they were until I held one. This is the AF-1 Super, which is my go-to point and shoot, which I'm always ranting and raving about how much I love. This is the MJU. It's tiny. I struggle to believe it's a 35mm camera. That's crazy. The MJU are definitely great cameras, but they also fall down the same rabbit hole of being popular and their price hiking, going from anywhere to nearly £200. It's just not worth it. I'd give the MJU a low B. If you are looking for a good Olympus point and shoot though, the AF-1 Super is good, but I've also recently picked up the AF-10, which is a bit smaller and more compact. With all the same basic features, you know, auto advancing, auto exposure, built-in flash, you know, the AF-10 definitely is looking to be a good point and shoot. And most importantly, it can be found for around £40. However, I am going to give this camera a high B, you know, higher than the MJU, but still in the same class as a B tier point and shoot. Also, please don't think I'm hating on either of these cameras. I do love them to death. In terms of an honest A tier point and shoot, it's kind of hard to just pick one. There are so many different point and shoots that are fundamentally good cameras with all the features I've talked about so far that are just any of them. I picked up this Canon SureShot 105 zoom the other day for £10 from an antique store. Yes, fundamentally, it's probably not going to give as sharp as an image as the MJU, but for £10, I would rank this an A tier because it's just such a cheap point and shoot. It gets the job done, it's got all the automatic features I want from a point and shoot for £10. The same goes for Pentax P30 point and shoots. Any just kind of point and shoot brand which fundamentally gives you the features of shooting film is an A tier point and shoot camera. I am being a bit mean to the Olympus MJU when I put it in the B tier, mainly because of its price point, but you can find cheap Olympus point and shoots. If you want a good A tier point and shoot camera, just head on eBay, search up 35mm point and shoot, and scroll until you find one that makes you happy. The main things I'd look out for are battery type, as some of them use more older, outdated batteries, which can be a bit more expensive now. So keep in mind, look for AA and make sure it's working. So that is just a list of some of the cameras I've seen online being talked about as the best cameras and my personal ranking on them. There are so many cameras I definitely haven't even covered here. I mean, I haven't even covered rangefinders, which are a whole different type of camera. So if you want to talk about some of your favorite cameras, or, you know, just have a general discussion about cameras, please feel free to comment. Message me on my Instagram, which can be found linked in the description below. Thank you guys for listening as always, and Matt out. Do you like film photography? Do you like watching people take photos and ramble about images? Why not support the channel? Like and subscribe, it's free! For more inquiries, follow my Instagram at Matthew_C41 or call 0800 145 89. Thank you for watching.